McAway,
Here.
LaSchultz,
Here.
Burns,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Here.
Chartrand,
Here.
Moorhan,
Here.
Moser,
Here.
Osborne,
Here.
King,
Here.
Boha.
Here. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge. As we stand here tonight, I wish to express gratitude for the low number of COVID cases and hospitalizations we have experienced in Lewis County to date. We appreciate the discipline and the patience that our residents have shown in response to this pandemic, which is the basis for our low numbers. Thank you. Please pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If there are no amendments, the 8/4/2020 board meeting minutes stand approved. Report of the Finance and Rules Committee per Rule 6.
The Finance and Rules Committee has met and they recommend the following action on resolutions: to waive rules to act upon late resolutions.
Need a motion? Dick, second by Randy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Privilege of the floor. Before we do that, we have a public hearing on the proposed county bond issue for Lewis County General Hospital Surgical Building Project. So we will open that public hearing now. And is there anyone here that would wish to address that public hearing? Please come forward, John, and state your name for the record, please.
My name is Donald Arthur. I am, most of you know me, I'm a longtime employee of the hospital. I do appreciate the opportunity to voice my thoughts and my comments concerning the $33 million expansion project proposed for our county hospital. You know, my questions and comments come from reviewing the information posted online in the presentation to the Health and Human Services Committee in both the September 2019 presentation and the more recent one in July of 2020. You know, if there was other information provided outside of those presentations that do answer my questions, please let me know. You know, I point my comments directly to you as legislators. You will be making a decision later in this meeting to allow this project to move forward. But based on my review of the data presented, I believe that there are too many generalizations, not enough specifics, too many assumptions, and at least one case, I question the accuracy of the data. In my opinion, you have not asked all the questions that you need to ask. You have not been given the answers that you need in order to justify that yes vote that will allow this project to move forward to the next step, seeking a CON from the State Department of Health. You know, I am not saying that renovations and updates to the physical plant as it exists are not necessary. However, I believe that this $33 million project as proposed exceeds both the medical needs of Lewis County, and secondly, the proposed project exceeds the financial means. The burden that it could place on the taxpayers of Lewis County is too great. The Lewis County General Hospital changed their status in 2014 from an acute care prospective payment system hospital to the designation of critical access hospital. I'm not here to question the appropriateness of that change. Actually, just the opposite. I think that that definition of critical access facility perfectly fits Lewis County Hospital. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, states that a critical access hospital is designed to reduce the financial vulnerability of rural hospitals and improve access to health care by keeping essential services in rural communities. In short, critical access hospitals are meant to provide essential healthcare services for those rural areas that would otherwise not have them available. But the key words here for me are essential services. Who and how do we define essential healthcare services for Lewis County? Does this project meet that definition? Does it meet the essential healthcare needs of Lewis County residents, or does it attempt to exceed those essential healthcare needs? You know, is it more of a wish list than an actual need? Are we trying to be more than what we really are meant to be? You know, one of the things that I looked at in preparing for this evening was the financial status of the hospital prior to the critical access designation versus 2020, right now. You know, everybody agrees that the status of the hospital financial situation now is very favorable. But why is that the case? What changed? You know, I'd like to read a portion of the minutes from the December 3rd, 2013 monthly legislators meeting. It is an update given by Legislator Hathaway concerning a meeting, the Board of Managers meeting of the hospital. Legislator Hathaway reported a $1.7 million year-to-date operating loss as of October 31st, 2013, compared to a projected budget surplus of $30,000. The loss is largely attributed to the lack of critical access designation, which had reasonably been expected. The hospital's year-to-date debt to the county is $1 million, increasing the total amount of debt to $5.8 million. Sounds pretty bleak. Now you compare that with where we are today. What happened? What's the difference between 2013 prior to and now? Has the hospital seen a significant increase in patient volumes? Was there a significant improvement in operational efficiency? No. Not that amounts to that much. When this facility was designated as critical access facility, it was then eligible for a windfall of money that the hospital became eligible for when the hospital changed its status to critical access. But just how tenuous is that money? Senator Chuck Schumer was at our hospital last September to sound an alarm. Fortunately, and that alarm is right here in the headlines. He was in our lobby. At Lewis County General Hospital, Schumer sounds alarm on devastating cuts to vital federal funding for rural hospitals expected this month. Upstate New York hospitals stand to lose billions. And on the third page, it says Lewis County General Hospital stands to lose over $6 million. Fortunately, I don't believe that those cuts were made, at least not at that time. But just how tenuous, how vulnerable is the profitability of Lewis County Hospital? How much of a risk is there in investing $33 million in this project? Question: how would the financial picture of the hospital change if those outside funds start going away? If I ask you today, what is the net operating gain or loss just from patient-generated volumes, just from patient-generated revenues and expenses for 2020? Would you be able to provide that information? completely separate from IGT, dish reimbursement, etc. Has that information been provided to you? Isn't that an amount that you need in order to make a decision to move forward? In 2018, the Hospital Board of Managers, and thus Mr. Chartrand, reported to this body a year-to-date surplus of $8 million. Mr. Chartrand reported for 2019 approximately $400,000 year-to-date gain. A decrease in $7.6 million between 2018 and 2019. How do you explain that? Did anyone ask? Do you know the difference? Did the Board of Managers ask? Did you even notice? Why? Is it a case of don't worry, be happy? In my opinion, there is a fundamental problem with how the financial picture is reported and portrayed, first to the Board of Managers and then to the legislators. Let me show you an example. I have copies here of 2 recent Board of Managers minutes. And this is the finance update given by Jeff Hollinger, CFO. And this is the June, period 5 review. There was a gain of $4.2 million versus a budgeted gain of $26,000 for the month of May, 1 million. The year-to-date surplus is 2.1 million versus a budgeted deficit of 46,000. Now, the one thing that stands out just in reading that, the month to date indicates there was a gain, and whenever you read the month to date, it's a gain or loss. When you read the year to date, it's a surplus. Now, the hospital is under an accrual accounting system, and I'm not sure exactly. I'm very familiar with a net operating gain or loss, but I'm not sure where a surplus comes in apart from cash. And then he goes on, Mr. Hollinger reported 3 stimulus payments were received in the month of May, totaling $5.2 million, which resulted in the gain of $4.2 million for the month. However, he added that our net operating loss each month versus budget, excluding stimulus, that $5.2 million, was $2 million loss in March, 1.7 in April, and 1.2 million in May. That's a realistic approach to that report. Okay, we lost that money, but because of that stimulus money, we gained. There was an explanation. That's the first time that I see any kind of different, because I faithfully read these minutes, and I don't see any kind of explanation I hadn't seen before that. When I turned to July, there was a loss of 128,314. I have to get a drink of water, I apologize.
Don, if I could ask you at this point, if you could limit it to 20 minutes, we would appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure why, because you've allotted. Is there anybody else here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, May, there was a loss of 128,314 versus a budgeted gain of 216,000 for the month of June. The year-to-date surplus is 1,980,000 versus a budgeted surplus of 169,000. No explanation of why we have a surplus 1.9. No accounting for that 5.2 million. And that's what I hear month after month after month reported to this committee, to this legislative body, is a bucket amount, a bucket that includes not just the revenue generated by actual patient revenues, but all of the other dollars, the IGTs. That accounts for the $8 million in 2018. How do you make a decision without understanding what the capability is for Lewis County General Hospital to earn, their net operating apart from those outside dollars? I don't understand. And I'll skip through some of this, but one of the arguments presented to move ahead with the project was in order to compete with for what and whom. One part of the question was answered: we need to compete in order to recruit physicians to provide those essential healthcare services. I accept that. But however, there is another aspect of competition that these presentations don't talk about. I believe there is a big part of the nature of this proposal that is meant to provide a means to compete for our own Lewis County residents, which to me is separate from the critical access in providing essential needs for Lewis County that don't have access otherwise. But if they can go elsewhere, why are we, that I don't understand. We have facilities, there were several hospitals mentioned in the presentations as being direct competitors of Lewis County Hospital. Samaritan, Carthage, a new modern up-to-date facility is being built in Utica. Aren't we also in competition with the North Country Orthopedic Group? They have their own ambulatory center there on Washington Street, competing with both us and Watertown. Also in Utica, we have a separate standalone surgical ambulatory facility that in essence will be competing directly with the new state-of-the-art Mohawk Valley. In the most recent presentation, Legislator Hathaway asked Mr. Kerr if there was any data that showed how the addition and renovations would directly impact physician recruitment. Mr. Kerr's response was that the young physicians simply wouldn't come. They are looking for a better experience. Are we going by the mentality that if we build it, they will come? Even if we attract those young doctors because of the updates to our facility, can we realistically afford to keep those doctors here once they arrive? What kind of financial packages would be needed to keep them? Again, can we compete with the financial packages offered by larger hospitals and even amongst the AMSURG centers where they would be promised apparently to be part of a piece of our donors, a piece of the pie? We purchased almost all the physician-based practices back in 2014. We no longer have any private physicians except the Laval Medical Associates with the Linedeckers. Are we making money or losing money on those practices? I would like to share a quote from Senator Chuck Schumer when he was here last September, where he said, "But because Lewis County General Hospital subsidizes primary care access and operates this service as a deficit, physician office practices as a deficit." Did you know that the physicians' offices are now operating at a loss? And that loss is being subsidized by outside help? Outside help that is totally in the hands of the goodness and generosity of our politicians. Are you saying that the trend will change if we add more practices? I'll finish here, but I think the other thing that I indicated that I was questioning the accuracy of some of the data. There's a chart here. The need for additional ORs. And even I noted that the difference between major surgeries in 2015 and 2019, 465 to 1,244. Now we have the same number of surgeries between 2015 and 2019. But there's major surgeries listed here. And what types of surgeries? One here that really stands out is the eye procedures. Now the only eye procedures that I know that are performed at Lewis County Hospital is a 15-minute procedure for cataracts. Now why is that under major procedures? And how come we have, okay, if we increased from 460 by 800 the number of major surgeries from 2015 to 2019, does that mean that we also decreased by 800 the number that went from more intensity to less intensity? I don't understand where that information is coming from. And I question the usage of the OR, but I won't get into that. But lots of questions that I think need to be answered. You know, we only have 2 physicians right now, as far as I know, one surgeon, general surgeon, and one orthopedic surgeon. How many more surgeons are we going to need to actually utilize, get full utilization of those ORs? We have an endoscopy room separate for endoscopies, but only the general surgeons perform endoscopies here. They can't be in 2 places. But you know, we need to look at the actual revenue and generated cash that's going to pay for this, because I question our ability, the hospital's ability to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Michael Young, President of the Board of Managers. We've presented over the past 2 years a mountain of evidence that supports this project. Without moving forward and without improvements, we will continue to fall even farther behind. Our facility is 19 years. That's the age of it. The standard is 11. We'd like to get to that. I appreciate Mr. Arthur's concerns, but we can't, the old saying, and I'm a statistician from the old days, you can make numbers say almost anything you want. We can look at just generating revenue from patient time. But being a critical access hospital, society and government realizes that we operate some things at a loss. That's why we get that aid. So we have to look at the whole picture. We've provided, I believe, a sound financial position. And we realize, as you've discussed over the past several months, that there are certain things we have to worry about. Critical access and the changes in the rules will make it difficult. And we've said, point blank, if that should change, then we have to revisit this and we will have to step aside for a while and reconsider. But provided that that type of funding remains in place, this is I'm going to use the word, a conservative project. I'm going to point out there have been bigger projects in this community. There's one just down the road at a high school or a school district. Those are the type of things we have to do in order to compete. And yes, it is important to compete so that we don't continue to lose residents. I'm also going to make the point that our residents want to be treated here, not in other places. They want to be near their family. Tomorrow, you're going to hear about family members talking about how they want to be near their family. We have more than one surgeon, more than one orthopedic. We're trying to provide the services that our community wants. And this project provides that. I believe we've answered the questions. Nothing in life is certain. This is a good project for the community, and I hope that you will support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, sir.
John Jones from Beaver Falls. First of all, I'd like to thank Jerry and his team for working on this project for, I guess it's been 2 years or more, and I think it's well deserved. But I just read in the Watertown Daily Times here just last week about the project. I think they did a good job. The only thing I didn't see in there was, and maybe Jerry could answer this or somebody, about the adult daycare program. I know where they were going to build a new facility for them, but the paper didn't say anything about it. And I was just wondering if we're still going to have it. And the second thing I'd like to ask is financials. The payback for this project, I guess maybe I don't know how the taxpayers are going to be affected, the amount of time we're going to have if we get bonded for it. I think we'd kind of like to know a little bit about that. And that's all I would like to say, and I think it's a well-deserved project. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else approach to the floor for the hospital project? Anyone for any comments in general for the privilege of the floor?
I have one other completely different.
Okay.
But I would like to add a comment that I think this is totally unfair that my time gets cut short for the president of the board of managers of the hospital, who has had 2 years to do research and understand what's going on. I spent a lot of time on this presentation, doing research, and all I had was what you had given me privy to online, and I think it's totally unfair.
In response to that, John, normally we limit time to 10 minutes.
But we're talking
I
$33
heard John
million.
saying that in the beginning, and I think your time was at least 2 or maybe 3 times longer than what Mike spoke.
Yeah.
So
I heard that
well
comment from Mike
compensated
too
time.
when I was complaining about the care in the nursing home. Anyway.
Presentation of petitions, communications, and notices. Oh, I'm sorry.
I did have something else.
Oh, I thought that was it. Sorry.
One more thing that I would like to talk about. I have in my hand a Gold Star banner. A banner that hung on my mom's wall right up until the time that she died 2 months ago. That Gold Star banner was given to her by our local VFW auxiliary to recognize and commemorate Mom as a Gold Star mom. I spoke at her funeral, how she always wanted to be a mom, but the last title she ever wanted was the title of Gold Star Mom. So she was given that title as a result of her eldest son, Larry, my brother, was killed in Vietnam on May 28, 1968. 52 years have passed, yet that Gold Star banner, his picture remained in a prominent place in her room. Her greatest fear, and most likely her dying breath, was that Larry's memory, his courage, his sacrifice be remembered. In her honor, and as I remember Mom, I have pledged to carry on that torch, that passion, to ensure that not just Larry's sacrifice be remembered, but Mom's sacrifice as that Gold Star mom be remembered. Unless you've been there and experienced it, it's very difficult to understand the depth of pain, the depth of sacrifice experienced by members of the Gold Star family. That said, the last Sunday of every September, this year is September 27th, there is both a presidential and a statewide proclamation recognizing that day to be set aside to recognize and remember the sacrifice of Gold Star families nationwide. I'm asking this group to consider a resolution to do the same, to recognize and honor the Gold Star families in your midst. With Mom's passing, I believe that there are only 2 Gold Star moms from the Vietnam era, and then 1 mom and 1 dad from Iraq. I ask that if you do this, that you specifically identify and honor them. Thank you, and it would be a whole lot to do.
Thank you. John, to your questions, I would comment that privilege of the floor is not supposed to be for discussion purposes or question and answer, but I'm sure if you would reach out to Mr. Kayer or Mike Young, they would be happy to provide the answers to your questions. Presentations of petitions, communications, and notices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The following resolutions were received from Greene County. A resolution opposing Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.52 requiring businesses licensed by the State Liquor Authority to serve an alcoholic beverage only if such alcoholic beverage is accompanied by a food item. And a resolution urging Governor Cuomo to sign State Legislative Bill A.952B and S.7880B to prohibit the incineration of firefighting foam containing per and polyfluoroalkyl substances and cohos. Legislators received correspondence from Scott Connell, Superintendent of Copenhagen Central School District, expressing his thanks to the Board of Legislators on their common sense approach to school reopening. That is the end of the report.
Thank you. Reports of standing committees. Tom, for Finance and Rules, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing at this time.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? If not, we'll move on to Jerry, General Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few motions I need to make. Motion to authorize Highway Superintendent Warren Shaw to refill a mechanic welder's position effective immediately due to resignation. Excuse me, I'll make that a motion.
Moved by Jerry, second by Ron. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Motion to authorize Solid Waste Director Crip Turk to refill an MEO position and all associated backfills effective immediately due to resignation also. I'll make that a motion.
Moved by Jerry, second by Dick. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Okay. And a motion to authorize refilling of highway superintendent position due to impending retirement of Warren Shaw effective November 27, 2020. And I'll also make that a motion.
Moved by Jerry, second by Greg. Discussion? I assume we're going to advertise this and, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you. That's all I have right now. I have a few resolutions in the packet. If anybody's got any questions, I'm going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Jerry? We'll move on to Randy with Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing more to add tonight.
Any questions for Randy? Thank you. Dick is the board's rep on the hospital board of managers.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them to present. The employee for the month of July is Bettina Bates, RN. You see Bettina up there, please congratulate her on her recognition as Employee of the Month. The board has approved the purchase of a security camera system from a company called Vercada at a cost not to exceed $150,000, and that's coming out of the capital budget. It's already in the budget for this year, and it's going to help with the security around the pharmacy as well, so some of the pharmacy proceeds will cover that as well. We had a loss of $426,000, but we had a budgeted gain of $176,752 for the month of July. Our total year-to-date surplus as of this month is $1,533,000 versus a budgeted surplus of $346,000. We appointed Lewis County General Hospital Medical Director. Stephen Leindecker, MD, will be this year's Lewis County General Hospital Medical Director. Copenhagen Health Center, the bids are in. We accepted a low bid. That project will move forward. It's expected to start before October 1st and finish before December 31st this year. Our New York State Community COVID testing, We tested 340 individuals through that program in the 3 clinics. No positive test results from that group. We're now down to about a 5-day turnaround from our labs. They're on the news today again, I saw it. The labs have upgraded their capabilities and they can turn it around quicker. We had an incident in a nursing home which resulted in our hiring a person from the Lowell PD department for 8 hours a day. The memorandum of understanding was signed last week, as I understand it, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. The lobby is open and the contracted security staff will staff the ED table from 9 to 7 p.m. on weekends. Empire Dermatology, the new group that took over dermatology, are going to start 2 days per week now. Their business has picked up to where they do that. If it continues to grow, they'll continue to staff whatever the proper number is. Barney, any questions? That's my report.
Questions for Dick? Thank you, Dick. Our hospital CEO is here. Do you have any thoughts or comments you'd like to share, Jerry?
Mr. Chartrand gave a very detailed and complete report. I can answer a couple of questions, if you wish, around the adult day health with my time.
Sure.
The adult day health program is currently held because of the pandemic, and we're waiting for rules to be promulgated or guidance to come forward. It's not encouraging in the short run. It appears as though we would have to reduce occupancy by 2/3. So now it becomes a very difficult model to administer with only 1/3 of the registrants. But we are licensed for 15, but can grow as high as 17. So 1/3 of 15 is fine, and it becomes very difficult to think about how to operationalize that model. However, there is a need for a medical adult day health program in our community. And with our building project, we would actually relocate adult day health care to the medical arts building where the physician practices are and the current board managers meet. And we would close down the circle to public access and actually create an outdoor space for the registrants who would use that program. So that is still in our vision, to create a new space for those individuals with outdoor access. So it isn't clear yet how we will get from here to there, but that's why we're here. We're going to try to solve and figure those out. So more to come on that. And as you know, the bonding is for 25 years at 2%. So that is an outstanding rate. And as we reviewed the financials in previous committee meetings, if we are going to invest in our building, the time is right to borrow money at those rates. And if you have any questions, I'll take those.
Question for Jerry? Anyone?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. County manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to get together with some of the county managers and administrators throughout New York State, and it was educational and also comforting knowing that we're all going through the same thing together right now. So what I want to talk about is a little bit about the uncertainty that we're facing right now, particularly as it relates to our 2021 budget preparation. So there's no secret, we've been talking for months about the state's budget deficit. The number that the governor uses is $16 billion. Our experts at NISAC that work very closely with the Department of Budget think that it's actually closer to 8 million, or 8 billion. So that's a good thing. We have already been cut 20%. A lot of our Q3 reimbursement payments have been quote unquote delayed. We do know that the state has plans to, and have in some cases already cut some aid to schools. So you've got to think to yourself, if the state is willing to cut schools, then they're definitely willing to cut our lead prevention grants and our 25 other ways that the state contributes to our budget. The state's budget deficit, like I said, they've got $2 billion from schools and local governments. So let's say they're at 8, that brings them down to 6. They have borrowed $5 billion already in bonding. So that pretty much closes the gap. If it gets worse, they have authority to borrow up to $11 billion. A lot of what we're hearing is that the state may delay payments into the 2022 budget. So since the state operates on a cash basis, if they delay payments until after April 30th or April 1st, then they can just push it onto the next fiscal year and then kind of kick the can down the road. So we might see some of that. Either way, I think it's safe to say going into 2021 that we need to count on a reduction in state aid. And that is what we have been doing when we've been meeting with department heads over the last month or so. At this point, we have met with all of our departments, and Eric and I have instructed them to bank on a 20% reduction to any state resource across the board. So we get about $7 million from the state of New York. So that does create a hole for our budget, but so far, knock on wood, we've been able to make things balance. A little bit on the budget schedule. Next, at the next committee meetings, we will bring our capital project and equipment requests to the General Services Committee. So you'll get to see some of the big things that department heads would like to do next year. We'll talk a lot about state aid adjustments with the Health and Human Services Committee. And then we do have a series, as we do every year, a series of personnel requests that will come through the Finance and Rules Committee. So we'll be spending a bit of time on budget at the next committee meeting. And then at the October committee meeting, we have traditionally the last few years used that time to do a somewhat of a budget workshop where we kind of look at the budget as a whole and have some discussion about tax rates and some of the things that legislators would like to see. By November 3rd, the tentative budget will be delivered to the Board of Legislators, and from there, you guys can make any changes that you see fit to the budget. One other thing to note from the state that I did learn is that the state has passed a bill. It's not yet signed by the governor, but we hope it will be, which will create a volunteer EMS and volunteer firefighter task force. The state recognizes that they're having a severe problem recruiting and retaining volunteers in rural areas like Lewis County. I know that Bob McKenzie's talked about this, Jerry's talked about it, Dick has talked about it here over the years. So hopefully some good action will come out of that. But so far, our approach to budgeting, big picture, there's a lot of uncertainty. Everyone in the state is dealing with it. We are building a budget that we feel builds in reasonable cuts, but not over the top, because we don't know what's going to happen. We could have a big stimulus bill from the federal government, and then it'd be awfully silly to cut jobs and programs just to put them back into place in February when the new stimulus money arrives. So we're kind of taking a wait and see approach. I think it's reasonable, it's flexible, it's conservative, and over the next couple of months we'll roll out more of the details. So that's my report. Thank you.
Questions for Ryan? Now we'll move on to County Treasurer report.
Yes, thank you. I've provided some written detail this month for some of our contingency reserves. I won't go through that line by line, but what you have is remaining balances for our contingency accounts for 2020. And I would note there that there are resolutions this month that will be using some of those balances, so that will be updated after those resolutions are passed. You also have balances for our reserve accounts for capital data processing, capital equipment, and capital buildings. On the second page of that report, and again, this is information you've seen in the past. I'm trying to change up the information I provide you from a month-to-month basis, but this is a good catch-up for some of this data for this year. So on the second page is our sales tax collection. We've kept you relatively up to date on that. Through 6 months of 2020, we are at 2.9, almost $3 million. I'm sorry. Well, I was looking at the quarter. second quarter was $2.9 million. The first quarter was $2.5 million in sales tax collections. We are about 8.5% below last year's collections. Given the situation this year, I think 8.5% is not a bad place to be, and hopefully we will continue to recover some of those funds as the year goes on. And the last item on that second page is our health insurance fund, which continues to remain healthy. We have a balance in that fund of about $6.5 million as of the end of August. That has been growing this year, and again, that fund is in good condition at this time. If you have any questions, I can do my best to answer them.
Tim?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that the next committee meeting that we have, we take up a discussion on this health insurance fund, and maybe have Eric give us a little more in-depth presentation of it, and what, if anything, we should do to adjust on that. Is that possible to do?
The next committee's meeting in September, I will not be available that day, so if you can hold that till October, I'd certainly be interested in doing that.
Okay, good. That should be fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Eric. Last call for any comments on the hospital public hearing. If not, at this point I will close that public hearing and move on to report of the Finance and Rules Committee for Rule 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Rules Committee reports that they have examined the claims presented for payment in the total amount of $1,557,647.04 and recommend that they be audited and allowed for the amount claimed.
Need a motion? Bill? Second by Ron. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Moving on to resolutions, are there any resolutions that people would like to pull from the slate, recognizing that number 210, number 221, and the late resolutions will be voted on separately.
Mr. Chairman, could we pull number 215 from the slate, please? That's
215.
dealing with appropriation of funds in the DA's office.
You want to discuss it separately so you can...
So I can abstain.
Exactly.
Any others?
Yeah, if I could propose that we talk separately on 225.
Anyone else? Okay, so from there we need a motion to accept the slate, and then we'll proceed with the rest of it. Dick, second by Jerry. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Okay, the next resolution is 210, auditing and allowing claims in the amount of $1,557,647.04.
Moved by Ron, Randy, second by Greg. Any discussion? Oh, roll call.
King,
Yes.
Colzer,
Yes.
Chartrand,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hathaway,
Yes.
LaSchultz,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Morahan,
yes,
Osborne,
Yes.
Dahlhoff.
Yes.
Okay, the next one is Resolution 215, resolution to appropriate funds, District Attorney Department.
Moved by Greg, second by Dick. Discussion.
Sean, you want to excuse yourself?
Yeah, when we vote, I'll abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we show Ian abstaining, and the motion carries.
Okay, the next one is Resolution 221, resolution authorizing the construction of a new surgical pavilion and renovations to the existing medical unit at the Lewis County General Hospital, stating the maximum estimated cost thereof is $33 million, appropriating said amount therefore, and authorizing the issuance of up to $33 million in serial bonds of the county to finance said appropriation.
Moved by Dick, second by Ian. Discussion. This is a roll call.
Yes. Hathaway,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Chartrand,
Yes.
Hulser,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
LaSchultz,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Morahan. Yes. King,
Yes.
Dolhoff.
Yes. Motion carries. Just a couple comments on that. This board has had several meetings with the hospital senior management, and they have complete confidence in their ability to ascertain whether they have the financial situation to move forward with this. I'm thinking about the comment that in general, as a business, you either invest in your business or it continues to decline. And as Jerry noted, the time is right to borrow money to move this forward. If we want this hospital to be in existence for the next 20 years or 30, I think it's imperative, and this board thinks it's imperative, to move this project forward in order to meet that goal. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
I think I'd like to make this one real quick. If we went through this process, we talked to the hospital board manager, we talked amongst ourselves, and the way this is written, it says the taxpayers raising the money. That had to be language that was in there, I understand it. But our goal and desire is that we're not going to raise that whole money with taxpayers' money, that the hospital is going to make a profit enough to make a payment for that. So I think that's a middle, I think it's important to note that, because I thought, whoa.
Yes, I forgot that the general consensus is that, from the presentation of the hospital senior management is that they will have the cash flow to support this project, and there will be no cost to the taxpayers.
The next resolution is number 225, resolution in support of local municipalities' adoption of a model solar development / zoning law, and for the Lewis County Planning Board to consider potential countywide impacts of utility scale solar energy projects.
Moved by Ron, second by Randy. Discussion.
The reason I asked for this to come out a little bit, when this first came up, and I think it might have been one or two other legislators felt the same way I did, I kind of felt we were telling landowners who paid taxes on their land and everything what they could and couldn't do with their properties. It was pointed out to me that this gets us developing a comprehensive siting guidance for solar development. So what we're doing is we're thinking of what the impacts are and making them known to the public, so if it's desirous to do something like that. And that would be similar to zoning within a village or municipality. So that changed my thought on this one.
And this is a recommendation, not a requirement.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not binding.
Non-binding.
And it gets people to think about it and have a discussion and stuff like that. Because, I mean, if it takes off potentially like it could, it'd be nice to look in the future and see what we might end up with.
That's all I got. I just thought I'd throw it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, when I read through this, I changed it. I'm gonna vote yes for this. previously it was more, I think they reworded some of this so that it seemed less of us telling them what to do, other than just, we're gonna give you a little guidance, if you wanna take it, if you don't. Because I'm still not for any type of restricting the taxpayer who's paying for that land tax. Because they're not, this is mostly agriculturally bound for it, because they have the most acreage. And if they want to lease their land to a solar company, I say go for it, because they're not gonna see that kind of income any other way. I mean, even when the corn crops were bad, and they were selling corn leased, off their properties, $1,100 an acre was top dollar for their corn. That's planting, they harvest. So if they can get better than that, I'd say go for it. Some people could probably retire with it.
And like we had before, it was a discussion, there's a potential, if they can want to use their scrub land first, that they can grow crops too in combination, so you can parlay that into a little bit more than they would by leasing just a straight farmland, so.
A lot of them are grazing goats under goats.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Jerry. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I should note my abstention on this as well. I have a professional conflict.
Show Ian abstaining.
The next one is Resolution 245, resolution to accept grant and appropriate funds in the planning department.
Moved by Randy, second by Greg. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
The next one is 246, resolution authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and 3+1 LLC.
Moved by Ron, second by Tom. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Other business. Bill, you'd like to comment, you'd like to make?
I'd like to rant for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
Take another point.
It's loaded with 2 minutes. I'd like to speak regarding the nursing home. And my comments are not directed anywhere locally. I think the hospital and public health have done an awesome job through this COVID situation. And I think if what I'm about to say, if they were allowed, they could make things happen better for the people of our county. The state policy on nursing homes does not take into consideration, in my opinion, the human cost. And actually, in my opinion, I think it's a travesty. A couple examples. A younger friend of mine idolized his grandmother. His grandmother was in a nursing home, not our nursing home, by the way. And if her passing was imminent, but the state said that the family couldn't go say goodbye. I have another close friend that is her father is in the nursing home. The last time they were able to see him, the 4 kids and his wife, was March 1st, because the state won't allow visitors. They do get the Skype, thanks to Jerry, and when they do a Skype, when it comes time to end it, the father has to turn his head. I don't know whether it's because that there's a tear in his eye or he just doesn't want it to end. But it troubles the family. It also troubles the family that
as of July 1st, they would have been married, he and his wife would have been married 53 years. That was the first time in 53 years that they couldn't be together to celebrate it because the state wouldn't let them. Another person that called me the other day and was trying to get a little insight into what's happening at the nursing home because he was concerned about a gentleman in his 80s that's there. And this gentleman in his 80s has been married forever, and they are very concerned about his wife that can't see him. I mean, they've been married for 60-some years. They're very concerned about the depression that is affecting this man's wife. Not to say nothing about the depression that's affecting the man himself. I am totally in sync with this, with the rally tomorrow. I wish I could be there, but I have to attend the funeral. But I am there in spirit. And I wish the state would think about the human cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Any other business? Motion to adjourn? Dick, second by Randy, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
I miss it.
Instead of taking a break,